Welcome everybody to Joe's channel. This is Joe's Bibles. This is Joe, and with me is another Joe. And today we're going to get into an interview of this Joe.
Hey, Joe.
Hello. So welcome back, everybody. Today, I wanted to interview, I think, one of the most interesting people on YouTube. He runs a channel and he does Bible stuff. And instead of me talking about him and how interesting he is, because I think he's really interesting and his channel is really interesting, I'm going to let him introduce himself.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate you having me on and doing these interviews. These are great. Thank you so much. I was telling my wife, I'm a big time now. I'm a big shot. I have to get an interview. So my wife said, "Oh, you're a big shot now." So, that, and I thank you for that. So I'm Joe, Saint Eggbenedictus. I run a channel for Bibles, books, and oddities, and got into it, I guess, over a year ago. And at first, trying to find my place, I didn't want to really do a YouTube channel, but my friend that I reference every video, I say, I give a shout out to my pal Mike. He got me into this, and it took me a while to find my niche, but found that I wanted to do channels with something I love, which is Bibles. And I discovered that other people review Bibles on YouTube, and I started watching a lot, and I thought, I can do this. And one of the things that I laugh when I look at all the Bible reviews is, I was finding all of the reviews are of new Bibles, and I can't afford new Bibles. I know sometimes you can solicit companies and they'll send you new Bibles, but I thought, wouldn't it be great to just review Bibles from the dollar store or the thrift store? So I have a used bookstore that I go to. My wife and my family and I go every week, and so I thought, well, I'll just start reviewing these Bibles. Some are, and then got into how Bibles are used, and got into my own collection of Bibles, and then kind of found a niche in speaking to the Bible towards a more I don't know, just different way, in a different way. And a bunch of other stuff, books and thrift store books and Bible books and just resources and all kinds of stuff. I didn't really want it to be too serious, but I do have new Bibles on my channel. So it's not that I steer away from new Bibles, but I try to give a smattering. I think my favorite is how Bibles are being used. And I like to see used Bibles and how people are writing in them and using them. And I've always liked that too. And then I always get a kick out of the reviewers who are really technical. I think I started watching Dr. Grant Jones. Jones, yeah. And I was fascinated. And he measures, the pages, and he measures the letters, which is amazing. He has a huge following, and I really enjoyed him. And I thought he was unique until I found other people from there. But he was really the first person I started to watch. So when I developed kind of my own voice and my own channel, I got out my ruler, and I had a Bible with like stickers on it. So I started measuring my stickers.
Yeah. I thought that was really funny.
Yeah. So that's kind of my place in the YouTube universe.
Well, I love the reviews that you do of your own Bibles and the ones that you've used in the past. And that sticker one was really funny. I just thought that was great. Because people have to see your Bibles, not just the Bibles that companies send you, which I think are cool. It gets a little bit sort of cookie cutter-ish, those videos, because I do some of those too, because you review the leather, the paper and everything. But it's quite different to see when people review their own Bibles, what they've used. Yeah. And I love the Bibles that you use, or the ones that you reviewed, because they're pretty eclectic. But I think the key there is it's personal.
Right.
And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah. Every Bible tells a story. And the truth is, when I review new Bibles, those reviews get the most amount of hits. So there's a market for that. And it's so funny. About 6 months ago, I was changing up my devotional time, and I wanted to look into a journal Bible. So I went to the store and I looked at all the journal Bibles, I thought, oh, I'm such an idiot. I should just go to all these channels and then put in YouTube, journal. So I found myself going back to people I watch when they did journal Bibles. It's so funny. So there's a place for both, but I like the stories behind the Bibles and how, using them. And then I started to find other channels of people who go into more used books and used Bibles, like thrift store Bibles, and Chad Brooks and some others, who really just give stories, and that's interesting. But I find it all fascinating. It's like I'm a Bible addict. My wife wakes up at 1 o'clock in the morning and she looks over and she sees me. What are you doing? I'm watching this video of the interleaved New King James Version. Leave me alone. Go back to bed. So it's interesting. So I like that. It's pretty cool.
So yeah, I love your channel. I think it's one of the most interesting ones that I've seen. And again, it's just not your run-of-the-mill Bible reviews. So tell me a little bit more about your channel and sort of where you're hoping to go with it and how it changes or how you're seeing it change.
Oh yeah, so I when I when I got into YouTube, I was taking a lot of advice from my friend Mike, and trying to again develop, what's the niche, what is my voice going to be, what am I going to bring to it, and you do what you love. So again, love Bibles, but one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to make it a little entertaining, and it was so funny because I was trying to find where am I going to go with this, and so I would watch my videos and I'd be like, man, this is so stupid. I'm going to post it anyway, but it's so dumb. But then, you look at YouTube and people are falling off skateboards and, dogs licking the lens. I'm like, that's what people like, So once I got past, myself and said, okay, I'm just going to do this for the fun, not for subs, not for, likes, just do it because I enjoy it. And especially when COVID hit and I had nothing better to do. Just really getting into it, just really making sure that I'm being entertaining somewhat. And I think that just because we review Bibles and it's a holy book, it's a sacred book, we want to be solemn, it still can be entertaining. Pointing out little things and in some ways, even pointing out things that are absurd or odd. I don't know if you caught, I did this children's Bible a few weeks ago. I called it the Mafia Children's Bible. I don't know if you caught that, but the trivia questions for like grade school, third or fourth graders, like what was the left-handed judge that stabbed the fat king? And I'm like, you have, a little girl reading this and she's like, oh, I mean, it was just such a poorly worded question. And then I had my most recent new review. And, depending on when this video comes out, is the supersized large giant print NIV. I mean, it was so big, I couldn't even fit it in my camera. And it was just tremendous. So, you kind of get into it and I'm thinking, people who are really take this seriously are going to like comment like you're being sacrilegious, but there's always little things you can find. Yeah. But one of the things that I did notice, because when I went into the YouTube kind of channel world, I came out of it from a baseball card collecting world. I was watching baseball card collectors because I wanted to get into baseball collecting. I did that when I was young. I love baseball. And so I was watching a lot of baseball card collecting. The problem was I didn't know anything about baseball cards. And that's kind of how I cut my teeth. But one of the things I noticed when I transferred over fully to the Bible world is that what differentiated the baseball card communities, they send care packages and they keep in touch and they collaborate and they give a lot of shout outs. And I noticed in the Bible world, we don't shout out enough. We don't support each other enough. We don't say, hey, check out this other channel. You should see what this person is doing or what that person is doing. And so I try to get out like care packages to fans and, just try to spread the love. We have all these Bibles, some of these guys, you look in the back and there's, all these new Bibles. I'm like, give them away. Like, that Skylar RSV, you don't like it, send it to me, I'll take it, and send stickers with it, like when you're in grade school. I grew up in a time in the 80s, you used to trade stickers and pencils and erasers, like that's, the baseball card community was doing that. When I transferred to the Bible community, people weren't giving those shout outs that, we didn't hear about care packages. So that's where I want to take my channel, and hope, other people follow as well.
And I think you hit a good word there, community. And this is what I
Yeah.
love about YouTube. And this channel is like a YouTube. This is a COVID YouTube baby. I mean, it was birthed last year during the COVID season, because I was like, well, I don't have anything else to do. I've got all this time and I don't want to have to kill my kids because I'm in the house with them for 24 hours. But community is huge. And you know what I love about watching different YouTube channels like yourself is you're not doing it for subscribers. You're doing something that's really interesting and something that you really love. And it did catch my eye because I love baseball cards. And one of the earlier ones that you did, it just looked like it was in your bedroom or something. It's like, oh, this is like in his this is like in his room, and he's showing us, these different cards. But yeah, I love that idea too. I don't know if you want to speak more about community over YouTube and the different YouTube Bible channels and stuff.
Yeah, I've just, I just appreciated it. The people to whom I subscribe, like we go for subscribers because we want to share the love, and we do want to share the message, and we want to promote, reading God's word. And, I mean, all of us, everyone I watched are, faithful Christians who all of us share the Great Commission to share the gospel of Christ. So we do that in our own little way. But as far as the people to whom I subscribe, I only subscribe to maybe 90 channels. So, with that small base, you're not going through your feed on your phone for an hour before you watch something. Like, as soon as Joe's Bibles comes out with a video, I'm watching it because I don't have 10,000 subs to go through. So I think, keeping it small is good in a respect, because you can build those friendships and that community. Thrift Store Bibles is probably the closest thing I have to like a similar channel as far as, the oddities and stuff. We started care packages very early on, like when he was new. And, we eventually exchanged phone numbers and we text each other, so you can go beyond. And there's another channel in Ohio that started moving about manipulating objects, and he does like Bibles and books and pencils and all kinds of, and he lives in Ohio, and they plan on connecting because they live, not too far from each other. And one time, Thrift Store Bibles left a comment that was off, like it was off color. It wasn't off color. I don't know. It was like really weird. And I thought somebody had hacked his channel, and he was just, so I'm like, oh, you got to call me. So I called him up. I'm like, somebody hacked your channel. He's like, oh no, that was me. I was trying to be funny. I was like, oh, okay. So, it's, there is a potential for that kind of community. And it's not uncommon for, like I said, my friend Mike is in the baseball cards, people come across the state just to visit him, and build that community because we have something in common. The channels are good. They're all well done, so it's fun to have that kind of camaraderie, with like-minded people. It's like a hobby. It's like a throwback to the old days when you used to like have ham radio, and you call your ham radio, guy, and you'd have your little friends that you never met, and you put the pins in the map, So yeah, there's a huge potential for that, and it's something we needed, and COVID has forced us to move in that direction somewhat, in a positive way, I hope.
Yeah, and I love the community both here and Facebook as well. We have a Bible community there, and I think it's just sharing the love of the word. And there's things that you love in this world, but there's also the thing that kind of unites a lot of us, which is the scriptures. And I love that. And so true to your word, Joe sent me a care package recently. I love this.
Toys.
Now I'm like, I got to send you something. So Joe sent me the Book of Common Prayer. And then I got some swag. I got some, I've never seen this. This is so cool. Pencils, and let me see if you can show, I can show you. It says here, YouTube Joe St. Eggbenedictus. This is so cool. I've got a whole set of them. I've got 5 that I found at home, but I think one of my kids may have taken one. I don't know if you sent me 5. So thanks for the swag. Thanks for the care package. Thanks for the idea. And I got to send you something now.
Yeah. Well, let me see. Hold on. You have a bookshelf back there. Let me see what I want.
I will. You know what? I want to go digital. I want to get rid of all this stuff. So for the people watching at home, what state are you located in?
Florida. So I serve as pastor in Treasure Coast, along the Treasure Coast, which is like eastern coast, Florida.
Nice.
So yeah.
Nice. That's so cool. We're
Yeah,
like
it's
on
pretty
opposite
town.
ends. We're opposite corners of the world. Or
Right.
the country. I'm in Seattle area. You're in Florida area. So that's cool.
Yeah.
All right. One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is your translation journey. I love this video. I must have watched it 2 or 3 times or maybe 5 times. When you talked about your love of the NRSV. And I think you had filmed it like on your, I think on the stage or where you.
Yeah, he's right at the pulpit.
Yeah, right at the pulpit. I love that. So maybe you could share a little bit about your translation preference and your journey, and then I'll ask you some more questions. But just let people know about your journey.
Yeah, thank you. So, well, if went to a Christian college here in Florida, West Palm Beach Atlantic University, and they required me to buy the New Oxford Annotated Bible. Now, by this point, I wasn't a new believer, but I didn't grow up I grew up in a Christian household, but we weren't a Bible reading household. In fact, for the extent of my father's life, I've never seen him open a Bible, but he was a very faithful Christian. He was just a kind of an armchair theologian, always working. He would tell me, "Joey, you have ants in your pants." I was like, "Dad, I take after you." So I didn't grow up in like where I saw my parents reading. So I really started to fall in love with the Bible in high school. And I had an NIV Child's Bible for a long time, and then I got that study Bible and a few other NIVs, but I didn't really know one translation from the next. I just knew I couldn't read King James. That's the only. I would pick up this thing called, I would pick up this Bible. I didn't even know it was called a King James, and then I couldn't read it. And so I just put it aside and got my NIV. But in college, they required me to get a New Oxford Annotated Bible, which is an NRSV. It's a study Bible. And so that was what was required of us. So it was a paperback. So, it fell apart within a half a year. I never really used it. I still used my other Bibles. And then finally, really, when I got serious and I chose to major in religion, then I got a hardcover. And I have a video where I go through all these, a hardcover New Oxford Annotated, and really just started digging into the word. I didn't even really read the annotations that much. I just got it because I just was familiar with the Bible. And I did read the, introductions. And I just kept buying New Oxford Annotated. I graduated from college, and then I went into seminary. I got my Master of Divinity. Then I bought a leather-bound one, which was the 3rd edition. And then by the time I finished my doctorate, they came out with the 4th edition. So I just kept buying them. and so I was the one I was familiar with, the New Revised Standard Version. But my thing, and you learn this if you watch any of my videos, my hill that I really fight on is gender inclusive ministry. So I went to a seminary that affirms women in ministry. That is the path that I chose to affirm women in ministry. So the gender inclusive or gender accurate or whatever the political correct term is nowadays is helpful for public worship. When I read it, when I read the Bible personally, it doesn't make a difference. But when I read it publicly, the gender inclusive language, which only the NRSV provided, or at least, well, yeah, all those years I've been in this business for 18 years, and only until recently had there been gender inclusive versions, 2011 with the NIV. So before that, it was just strictly the NRSV. So preaching in churches that affirmed women in ministry, I've always pastored churches that have ordained women to the ministry. It was very important for me to read that kind of translation. And I still use my NoApps today. I still have my 3rd version, my 3rd edition from 2004 on my desk here at home. And I, keep my 4th edition at work, and I use it every week for sermon prep. I love it. It's nice, and it has what I call the wang factor, nice wangy leather, and I love it. I can't part with it, and I use it for all my, writing and stuff. But devotionally, I don't use it.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit more about. So you preach from the NRSV,
right?
And you shared this in your video about the NRSV, but tell us why it's important for you to have a gender inclusive or gender accurate translation from the book.
Well, I mean, people in the room are, are made up of men and women.
Right.
So it's, for me, we bear witness to Christ,
Mm,
and part of that is bearing witness to Christ to the whole congregation.
right.
And so when I say brothers, I say brothers and sisters. When I say, you know, uh, you know, um, see, I don't even know gender exclusive language anymore. I can't quote, you know, like the NIV anymore. But I mean, if it says, if a man, if a man confesses Christ, he will be saved. Like I said, I can't quote this stuff.
Right.
I'm so used to saying if anyone, or someone. I mean, that cuts out half your congregation.
Right.
So when I do gender inclusive language, it not only invites half of my congregation to be a part of the conversation, it also affirms their the dignity and the self-worth and the inclusion. Some people are really adamant about not having women as ministers, and that's one thing. That's a theological paradigm. But it's
Yeah.
another thing for women to feel left out entirely.
Mhm.
Um, and and sometimes in our language, even though man in the Bible is gender inclusive, like in the King James version, it still plays on the subconscious in a way that shapes how people think about their place in the kingdom of God.
Mhm.
And I'm not comfortable with women in my congregation thinking they're second class,
Yeah.
citizens of the kingdom of God. People don't, people say, well, you're too serious with that, Joe. Nobody looks at it like that, but they do. I've counseled, too many couples, too many women in the faith who felt that they were just second class citizens. They didn't have a voice. And those little things make a huge difference. So
Mhm.
bearing witness to everyone, including everyone in the conversation, giving everyone an equal footing at the foot of the cross is really important. So even ministry aside, it's
Yeah.
still important to include everyone.
Well, I love that, bearing witness to everybody. And
Yeah.
so I was going to go there. I was going to ask you another question about that. How important is it for you to have the NRSV as a translation that you preach from in your context, in your ministry context? And you shared a little bit about, yeah, counseling women and different
Right.
people. Yeah.
Yeah. It's very subtle.
Right.
It's a subtle thing. And again, people say, well, it's not a big deal. People know when you say all men, come to faith through, whatever,
Mhm.
they know. Yes, but we have other ways to put it. So if you have
Mhm.
other ways to put it, why not?
Right.
It's like, why do we need to retain an archaic gender exclusive paradigm that no longer fits our culture and really never fit our culture? When it doesn't reflect the image of God. We are all God image bearers,
Right.
but then we cut out half of people who are made in God's image and how we speak. Part of the reason why I love the Bible is because I love language and I love the English language and I love and you find this in my videos. I talk about rhetoric and
Mhm.
how the Bible shapes and language and how translations shape language and how that affects how we read it. So I really love delving into how language shapes us. Realize that our images of God and how we use language in public worship can really affect and shape how we understand God and how we understand ourselves. And I think there's a disparity between the two.
Yeah.
And too many people, I think, are leaving the church because they feel like they don't have a place or they don't have a voice, or that God is a God they don't want to worship. So it's subtle, but it's important.
No, this is a very different ministry context than Chicago, where I grew up in, or even in Iowa, where I spent 3 years. And this is a very different ministry context, and you have to have the right tools to reach people,
Right.
so that the transmission of the scriptures gets into the hearts and the souls of people. And I think translation is one of those things. It's subtle, but it's important.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, our church, we are an NIV church. It's not my translation for study. I use a different devotion, different translation for devotions. but we use the NIV because we feel like in this part of the world, part of the US, where we have people who are non-English speakers, we feel like that's the translation that I
Right.
think is going to carry weight and be understood by people who are not natural English speakers.
Yeah. I still think the NIV is going to go down as one of the best translations of the 20th century.
Yeah.
I mean, the NIV is so good, and it really is accurate. I know people say, well, it's, dynamic, it's not literal. But if you read like the New International Commentary, which is based on the NIV, and you see why some translators chose, it's really such a good translation. So I'm a big fan of the NIV. Do you use the ESV for personal devotion? What do you use for personal devotions?
I do. So my thing was I started with the NIV, and I think we had probably the same NIV study Bible growing up, or when I first became a believer. I had the 10th anniversary, and then I went into the ESV for a short time. Actually, not even a short time. It's really an important time in my life. It was the ESV. Then I started coming back, or went back to this church that I'm in now, and we use the NIV. So I've been in it for about 7 years. But I think, so here's the crazy thing about the NIV. The language is so good. Like, I think it has really the most sophisticated English, but understandable. I think it reflects the Koine Greek, the language of the people that the biblical Greek was in. So I love that. I think, to me, I've just been in it for about 7 years, 8 years now, and there's something about the familiarity of it, where to me it's sort of like, I need to go back to the ESV. But anyway, I preach out of the NIV, sometimes the NASB, sometimes the ESV, but it's primarily the NIV. And then for my personal devotional times, I do ESV and NASB. So I like to geek out, in these formal translations, very wooden. So that's me. So now one of the things that's interesting about you is you preach from one translation, and then you do devotions in another. So maybe if you could share about that.
So this is another thing where I little self promotion here, but another thing that I was watching was, read the Bible in a year. You watch these videos, read the Bible in a year, and I'm like, man, I'm going to do a video, read the Bible in 10 years. It has literal, which was a joke. And I thought, man, it's like just setting you up for the comedy factor, So I'm like, man, you got to read your Bible in 10 years, But for 10 years, I've been reading the New Living Translation. I'm such a slow reader. And, I have a lot of things to do. And I read a lot. So I don't read my Bible every day. I read Christian literature every day, and I do read parts of my Bible every day. But my devotion, it's because I'm, like I said, my dad used to say you have ants in your pants. Because I'm such a busybody, it really does take me a long time to read and sit and actually focus, and usually have to be alone. So for 10 years, I had read through the New Living Translation, and I fell in love with it. Which, by the way, NLT, the New Living Translation, is gender inclusive. Right. Not a lot of people talk about that.
Right.
So a lot of people say, well, the gender accurate or gender inclusive, and they promote NLTs, and I'm like, the New Living Translation is gender inclusive. It's not as, it doesn't have the stigma. The New Revised Standard Version and the RSV have stigmas attached from the Bible battles of the 50s and 60s, but the NLT, but it's such a good translation. I think I did like the History of the Bible series, over the course of the summer. And one video I said, if you want to see the best of each translation, read this book and this translation. Like Romans in the New Living Translation, I understood Romans in a whole new way. It took me, 10 years to get there, but it took me 9 years to get there. But I love the New Living Translation, but I'm finished with that. I've done it for 10 years. So I moved on to Robert Alter's The Hebrew Bible, which is, man, it's so good. It's very literal. He maintains the cadence in some ways of the King James Version, because Robert Alter is a literary scholar, not a Bible scholar, although he studied Hebrew for 20 years. And it is so good. It's literal, so it's wooden, but his word choice, and he has all the commentary in the bottom. I'm just really enjoying it. So it's going to take me another, I don't know how many years to get through the Hebrew Bible alone. And then I figure when I get to the New Testament, I may do the RSV, which I've never read the whole Bible through in the RSV, or the Jerusalem Bible, something obscure.
Yeah.
I tried the King James Version about 3 years ago. I bought one from Church Bible Publishers. It was real nice. I was like, oh, hot dog. I spent like a lot of money on a Bible, and I just couldn't get into it. But devotionally, I think people need to take risks and read something that's really going to feed them. I was just sitting here waiting for us to chat, and I was hanging around, waiting for our appointment. And I have this Living Bible that I picked up from the used bookstore. It's still in the box, Children's Living Bible. So I'm going to review this one day. It's the Living Bible for children, but I was flipping through and I read Psalm 23 just for the fun of it. And one verse says, where it says, you have set a table before me, and my cup overflows. He writes, and I was just, like I said, reading this a few minutes ago, you have welcomed me as your guest. Blessings overflow. And the Holy Spirit just went right then and there. You just now, you can't take any translation for granted. I mean, I was sitting here waiting, hanging out, looking at my bills and playing my phone. And then I just grabbed it because I have to review it eventually down the road. And it just went boom. You have welcomed me as your guest. Blessings overflow. And that's it. You just receive it. You receive the Spirit. So this the translation has to, you think some people need to take risks when it comes to that.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's worth it. And it makes people insecure to take risks and to jump into another translation. Now, for me, the King James is, I tried, I didn't give it, I didn't give it the Boy Scout effort, but I just felt like, I don't know if I could read this. It's just, to me, I need something in a more contemporary language. I do love the NLT. I feel like that's one of the most underrated translations out there. My first experience with really understanding the Gospel of Mark came because a group of us went through that gospel in the RSV. And when we went through the RSV in the Gospel of Mark, it was like, whoa.
Wow.
I get it. I understand it, and it's not like Mark is a difficult book to understand, but I think there's something about that translation in that book that to me was very meaningful. So I really love that. So where do we get a copy of the Robert Alter translation that you have?
You have to get it from Amazon. It goes up, and you can get it from, you can get it from Amazon. It comes in 3 volumes. It's like a box set. Just look up Robert Alter, so you can watch my channel, and I reviewed it briefly. But it fluctuates. It can go as low as $69 on sale, or $79 up to $120. Wow. It's 3 big volumes. So I love the Old Testament. So I think I bought it for Christmas or something. Well, I bought it. I don't know. I might have bought it for myself as a thought gift. So,
Merry Christmas to me.
Yeah, I bought a Cambridge NRSV for Christmas. That was my Christmas gift, because I had an NRSV that I was using for worship, but the type was so small, and I had to get a Cambridge, and that's the one that was in that video that I made at the pulpit with the NRSV. Cool. So, but it's interesting, you have to, for me, it's, everyone says the best Bible is the one you read. And when you're reading something that really just, and you're open, the Holy Spirit will work through it.
Yeah.
And
I think that's important. I think it really is whatever language, whatever translation speaks to you. And I know that sounds corny, but man, that to me is true. I feel like the NIV for me is one of the most understandable, sophisticated translations that I've read. Just great English. But my heart goes to the ESV and the NASB. It's just whatever fits you, like I feel like that's cool.
Right. Well, I told you, I'm not familiar with the ESV at all. I don't even own an ESV. I don't have anything against it. I never picked it up. Actually, before I got Robert Alter's Hebrew Bible, I was going to read the ESV. That was going to be my Bible, so I can familiarize myself with it, so I can get used to it. And I thought, well, it's a new translation. I mean, it's similar to the others. So I was going to read through it. And, I have my whole life ahead of me. I can do that. But the ESV, I was going to get an ESV to read through, and but the Robert Alter just won out. and so I'll get there eventually. But I don't even own one, so I had one for like a week, and then I gave it away. I bought it from the used bookstore. It was a really nice copy. I reviewed it, maybe, or maybe I don't even know if I don't think I reviewed it because I didn't feel like I can review it with integrity because I don't know the translation, other than the leather and the binding.
Yeah.
But I gave it away.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah, I'll get to it eventually.
In 10 years, maybe.
Yeah,
well, it's on the queue.
See. We'll see. Yeah, I started the Robert Alter about I don't know, maybe 3 months ago, and I'm only in Exodus.
Wow.
Chapter 19, I think. But
well, yeah,
the altar has all the commentary in the bottom, so I'm reading, and then I'm reading down below the commentary. So every chapter is twice as long because you have the notes, and it's so interesting, so fascinating.
Well, 3 months, that's not bad to be in Exodus 19.
Yeah, well, you get the begats and the begots and the
the total. That's cool. Hey, thank you. We are out of time here. I really appreciate this. This has been really fun. Yeah, I love this interview. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
Let me see is there anything else that you'd like to share about your channel? Any other thoughts before we go?
No, like I said, I really appreciate you doing this. I like, when I talk about the direction of where I think we should go as Bible reviewers in the Bible community, you're doing it. You're calling on people to interview. I know, your interview with Pastor Jay was fantastic. He's so full of energy. He's really just entertaining to watch. And, it's really good to have this kind of conversation. You can't really get this in the comments section all the time. So I really thank you for putting the work in, for making everyone, all of our time is limited. So you have to make a conscious choice of where to devote time for content. You need content to, propel your channel forward, but then you can't do everything. So I'm just really thankful and honored that I'm with you today. So thank you for that.
That's cool, man. Thank you. Like I said, Joe's channel is one of the most interesting channels I've ever watched. Please subscribe to him. I'm going to leave a link below to his channel, but check his channel out. Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate this.
Yeah, thanks. And if you ever watch my channel, you say, man, that's just so stupid. You're not alone. I say it all the time. Man, that's just dumb. Let me go and jump off the trampoline. I'll get like 1,000 views.
But all the other stuff, the non-Bible stuff, is what hooked me to your channel, because baseball cards and games, and like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, I know. Uncle Nicky's putting the baby down, so he's always telling everyone to shut up and and all that. Yeah. So, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate it. Have a good one. And yeah, thanks for sitting down and chatting.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks everybody. See you in the next one.
Thank you.